Praise the Lord for this moment. The Attorney General representing the President, the Justice of the Court of Appeal, Constitutional Court, our keynote speaker today, Your Lordship, Justice Egonda Ntende, the Honorable Minister Kahindo Otafiri, senior citizen, who is in our midst here, the President, Uganda Law Society, Deputy, and all members of the Council, my colleagues in political leadership, the family of Njuba, all of you, the stakeholders, members of the Radical New Bar, ladies and gentlemen, I salute you all in your respective capacities. And we thank the Lord for this moment and for you, the commitment you have made to reminisce on the instructive life and legacy of Sam Njuba. We thank you, the leadership of the URS. We thank you, the family. We thank you, all of you, the stakeholders, including our elder here, Mzee Matthew Kikiri, for all the information we have shared this morning. It's vital, it's important, and I think we have done justice to our foreign hero. I thank you very much. Having said that, my talk will specifically focus on one dimension, Njuba, the legal activist. All has been said, but that aspect is critical, and it's more relevant when we talk about the role of the Radical New Bar in the context of the political challenges we are confronting with, and actually legal challenges. It's vital, it's important. When you look at the life of Njuba, it was nothing else but activism. As a lawyer, he was a legal activist. As a judicial officer, he espoused judicial activism. And as also a serving political leader, he did the same. In those three aspects, I'll first speak about the Njuba of the 70s and the legal activism, because that is the time when he assumed the leadership of Uganda Law Society. Many have spoken about Njuba being the president in 1978, but prior to that, he was a secretary of Uganda Law Society, if I'm not mistaken. And he served very well with a distinction in that position. When you read the memoirs here, the records, you discover that Njuba not only represented ordinary citizens, but he defended the colleagues in the legal profession because they faced threats, occupational hazards, and many of them suffered the brunt of the state excesses. Many of them, many lawyers. He records some of the names, like Rotazia Ijuhugu. He talks about Kara Henry. Many of you know Mpungu. You know Joash Sendege, Pius Kawere, and many, many others who suffered the brunt of the regime excesses that time. But he never abdicated his duty of defending his colleagues who suffered at the hands of the regime. As a leader, and he mobilized his colleagues to always stand firm. And he paid a heavy price in defending victims of injustices. He recounts quite a lot. You read chapter 5 and 6. He tells a lot about what they went through. He recounts those horrible days. But I will speak out one instance, one incident, which happened to him, and it stands out in most of, in his records here. He was following up a case at Buganda Road as a lawyer, and there were instructions from Kassim Obula the one who headed the notorious Naguru public safety unit, the most dreaded one at that time, Naguru there, where many lawyers were detained. So he recounts, he writes here that when he went to find out what had happened to the person who had been arrested on just a simple charge of theft, he reached Buganda Road, and when he met the clerk had to call someone somewhere, whom at that time he didn't know. So he called, and then the response from that side was that, who is that person daring to follow up that matter? Then he was given the headset to talk to the gentleman who had called. And then the answer was, please, why are you following up that matter? Where do you get the guts to take that step? He explained he was a lawyer pursuing a matter. Then all of a sudden the phone hung up. No, he said, let me talk to that gentleman, the clerk. After that communication between the clerk and the person on the other side, on the other end of the call, the orders were that you are under arrest. He said, what? You are under arrest. Crime following up a case of a client. So he happened to be in the company of the relative of the suspect. The first person to take off was the relative of the suspect. He fled the scene very fast. Then Njuba remained there. He was picked and he dragged to the to the public safety unit in Naguru. What happened? You needed to read it. The kind of humiliation, actually not only humiliation, the dehumanization he was subjected to. The beating, the torture, what he went through just because he was defending somebody and was executing his duties as a legal practitioner. But he never recoiled from duty. He stood firm. And what happened subsequently, because he found there Kassim Obura. Many of you have read about Kassim Obura. You know what he did. And the Ali Towel. Those ones, they were real brutes. So, Njuba defended many of these people. Njuba stood firm and defended his colleagues, and also never recoiled from duty. The call I make to you, members of the New Radical Bar, there are lessons to pick from Njuba's experience, and many of his contemporaries who suffered at the hands of the regime in defense of human rights, in defense of justice, in defense of rule of law. So you must rise to the occasion. Today, the situation calls for legal activism. Mr. President, Uganda Law Society, you owe us no apology to adopt that stance of legal activism. You should do it. And many of us picked a cue from Njuba's experience and we have pursued that line. And there are lots of things that we have achieved out of that. Actually, new phenomena have actually been introduced into our jurisprudence. It defeats now logic that the gains were registered through legal activism, the Attorney General, they are being washed down the drain. So as I conclude on that particular point, there is a message for you, the Attorney General. And it is an excerpt from here, because now we are recounting the life of Njuba. And I want to read this about the lawyers who were arrested. This excerpt will pass on a message to you, the Attorney General. It's on page 85 of this book, the last paragraph about the arrest of lawyers. As fate would have it, Ayigihugu became a very active defense lawyer. In so doing, he created many enemies in the regime. It was then his turn to be arrested and was detained at Naguru. No effort was spared in contacting all persons close to Amin, But that notwithstanding, he remained in detention. That is Aiguhugu. Ayume, you know him, Francis Ayume, worked very hard in presenting his case to Amin directly sometimes, or through other cabinet members to whom he had access. It was becoming impossible as weeks turned into months. Something had to be done in order to save his life. No one could individually handle it. We therefore decided on a collective effort to meet Amin at a social function. The Attorney General, why I'm passing on this message to you, the Attorney General, that time was Godfrey Rule, largely through Francis Ayume, managed to get him to accept the invite to the meeting at which lawyers presented their grievances. One of the grievances on the agenda was Aiguhugu's case. The magistrate read their petition. The lawyers too had their petition read by Joseph Mlenga. At the end of the petition, Idi Amin responded, "Who is this man?" he inquired. Isn't he that lawyer whose release I ordered a long time ago?" We were all astonished. I sneaked out to the director's office. The meeting was at the Road Development Center, and rang Aiguhugu's house. And sure enough, he was at home. What actually happened was, when Idi Amin learned his case was likely to come up at the meeting, he quietly ordered his release before coming to the meeting. Idi Amin outsmarted all of us. The issue ended there and then. We all appreciated Ayume's efforts, both public and private. Why I am getting that excerpt from this, the Attorney General played a central role in the release of Aiguhugu. Our president is a fugitive, is in exile. What is the role of the Attorney General in his coming back here? The coming back, we want to hear it from you. I mean, he was a brute. I mean, he was a dictator. I mean, he was a murderer. But the Attorney General that time stood up and said, no, one of our own, Aiguhugu, must be released. Mr. Attorney General. The Honorable Svambi said we are orphans. Yesterday we had the General Assembly. The President addressed us almost with tears coming out of his eye. He showed that his baby, who is less than 1 year old, the baby is also in exile. We are in a quagmire right now. We can't hold elections because of multiple litigations and whatnot. We are in a total mess as the legal profession, as the bar. At one time, there was even an attempted coup by one Munaba, the Secretary General. And I'm surprised when you get the Secretary, you read about Njuba. He was Secretary of Uganda Law Society. He was defending lawyers. He was not overthrowing his colleagues who were leading the bar. But we have a Munaba who turns the gun against the President of Uganda Law Society, who has a boot on his head. So we want to see the role of the Attorney General. I want to see the Honorable Attorney General Kiwanuka playing the role of Godfrey Rule of the Idi Amin days in releasing Aiguhugu, and you are causing the return of our President so that we continue with the leadership. Now, the second last is about judicial activism. Njuba, they have mentioned here, the Honorable Kikiri here, when he served as Chief Magistrate. Njuba was approached by Idi Amin because there was a vacuum after the expulsion of the Asians. He writes in this book, many of the magistrates were Ugandans of Indian origin. So when they were expelled, there was a vacuum. So they approached many lawyers to serve on temporary contract. That's how he served on a 6-month contract. Many of them accepted. So Njuba, even when he served as a magistrate, he remained an activist. He espoused and actually executed judicial activism. There are so many instances, I don't have time to recount. Read the book. People buy the book. If you can't buy the one of 100,000, at least the one of 50,000. Get this book and read it. You'll understand Njuba the man. So Njuba and his friend who had been appointed on contract, is called Mbazira Emmanuel. They were in a terrible situation on how to rescue people who are suffering injustice. He tells a story which is quite harrowing. That at one moment, they were in chambers with his friend. Now they bring a man, he's called Dungu. Dungu was charged with a simple case again of theft by the notorious Kassim Obura of the public safety unit in Naguru. So when he comes in the dock, they realized he was going to be released. So Kassim Obura and his team decided to withdraw the case. So when they withdrew the case, Dungu, who was in the dock, pleaded with the magistrate, please don't release me, remand me, I'm going to be killed. But now, Njuba and his friend, his colleague, realized they had no ground to remand him because the charges had been withdrawn. So they decided to tell him, please, you have been discharged. He said, no, I'm not going anywhere. Please remand me. They found in themselves that predicament and said, how do we handle this? So they conferred and said, now, let's leave this man. So when they went to the chambers to find the solution, the man came running to them in the chambers. Meanwhile, those vicious men were already in the courtroom running after the man. So what they did in Juba and in Bazira, they opened the window of Uganda Road. The same building, it has not changed. They opened the window and told the man, run, to flee. That is judicial activism. The man ran, they followed him up, blah, blah, blah. The lawyer, Sebunya, was arrested and taken to Naguru. So as these people ran after the man, as fate would have it, they finally got him, loaded him onto the truck. As they were about to reach Naguru, they shot him dead. Several bullets, shot him dead. But good enough, Sebunya, his lawyer, had been taken in at Naguru, and he was watching each and everything. So he's the one who testified in the case of Kassim Obura, and Kassim Obura was convicted, executed. But before his execution, he talked about Njuba's arrest during UNRF. Njuba found himself in the same cell with Kassim Obura, but Kassim Obura was executed. Now, why am I bringing this story which was told to us by Njuba in this book? You can see the magistrates, Njuba, Mbazira, and others fighting to rescue victims of injustice, doing everything possible to ensure that they save lives. That is judicial activism. Now I'm wondering, my Lord, I'm sorry to raise this. This is one thing that has baffled me. Through judicial activism, there are quite a lot of innovations that we have made in our jurisprudence, like a mandatory, you heard of mandatory injunction, something which was alien. How can an injunction be mandatory? We have things like statutory interdicts. We have things like amendment of the Constitution by infection. All those innovative doctrines have found their way into our jurisprudence. But there is one which was quite innovative by Justice Ogora, interim bail. Very, very interesting. We could read into the law, there was nothing like interim bail. But out of his ingenuity, he came up with that doctrine and granted Dr. Kizza Besigye bail. That was judicial activism. Now, all of a sudden, 20 years down later, because initially that was 2006 when Besigye got interim bail. 20 years down the road, we are reversing those gains. Besigye, who got interim bail in 2006, cannot get mandatory bail, which is fundamentally provided for in the Constitution. After spending 180 days on remand, he cannot get mandatory bail. He was admitted to interim bail in 2006 on the same charges, treason, terrorism. 20 years down the road, he cannot get mandatory bail. What has gone wrong? So what we have today, as I conclude, we do not have judicial activism, but we have judicial tyranny. And that's what Semakade was talking about here in his address. We must deal with the judicial tyranny. Semakade is in exile because of judicial tyranny. And many people have faced the wrath of it. There are rampant abductions everywhere, in and out. We need to deal with this. The very last aspect of Njuba's legal activism was when he was a minister for justice and constitution, state minister. Njuba shocked all of us. You were sitting minister. You are superintending of a constitution-making process. Justice Odoki makes a report which was going to inform the debate in the Constituent Assembly. And Njuba came out and stunned the nation and said that document was doctored. There is a satanic clause in that document. Satanic clause. Which one? They had smuggled in a clause about National Council of State, which was alien. Njuba said, no, I will not own up this. You know the doctrine of collective responsibility, Keke here. I'm sorry to call him, this is my classmate. We used to call him Keke. I'm sorry. So Keke, the doctrine of collective responsibility was defied by Njuba. That was defiance. That was activism. Some of you need to do it. I have heard on occasionally Kahindo Tafire here defying collective responsibility, but we need to get more of that in Njuba. The last one, I have another message, not this from this book. I'm sorry I've taken a lot of time, but 1 more minute, and I call it a day. This one is equally instructive. My brother Billy Gwahia talked about Jole Joe Kiwanuka. This is a message to you again, once, Attorney General. It's not for me. It is now, this time around, it is Vincent Sekono has a message for you, the Attorney General. Vincent Sekono, my life and my work in Uganda and beyond. Vincent Sekono was the secretary of the he was your neighbor, Matthew Kikaira, I think. No. The chairman of the EC by then, Chichira. This one was the secretary of the commission led by Chichira. This book is very recent, 2005. He writes about Jole Kiwanuka. Actually, his true name is Joseph Alidechi. A journalist, football enthusiast, and a politician. Just a small excerpt here, since we are reminiscing on the life of Njuba the activist. On the 19th of December, 1969, there was an assassination attempt on President Obote's life when he was closing a UPC delegates conference at Lukwago Indoor Stadium. Thereafter, several opposition politicians were arrested, including Jole Joe and Abu Mayanja. As Jole Joe battled to clear his name while in detention, Express Football Club descended into Disare. In 1971, after spending almost 2 years in jail, the new president, Idi Amin, released Jole Joe along with other political prisoners. When Amin banned the political parties, Jole Joe dedicated more time to Express Football Club. However, when political figures started disappearing and some other people being murdered at an alarming scale, Jole Joe realized his life was under threat. He therefore relocated to Nairobi, Kenya, but in December 1973, Jole Joe and some other colleagues were kidnapped from Kenya, returned to Uganda, and sadly murdered. At that time, Jole Joe Kiwanuka was 58 years of age. I knew his son, Jime Mugambe Kiwanuka, because we were contemporaries in life, although we went to different schools. We caught up in life when we started working. Jime Mugambe Kiwanuka is a father to the current Attorney General, Kiryowa Kiwanuka. Your grand Jole Joe was kidnapped from Nairobi, brought back here illegally, and killed. That brings back the recent events of Dr. Besigye being kidnapped from Nairobi, and I don't want him to be murdered. I thank you. May God bless you.
Another round of applause for the Lord Mayor. Thank you so much for that recount. It has been very deep, both personal and professional.